Polls consistently show that Canadians care about the environment. So it is interesting to see that we often read articles criticizing Canada for having a poor environmental track record. So we're going to take a look at that record to see if that is true or not. Today's guest is Elmira Aliakbari, Associate Director of the Centre for Natural Resource Studies at the Fraser Institute. She is the co-author of a study, Environmental Ranking for Canada and the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And you can actually check out that study online at fraserinstitute.org. So welcome to Bridge City News, Elmira.
Thanks, Paul, for having me.
You bet. Well, can you first of all tell us why Canada often seems to end up with a low ranking compared to other nations? Are we doing that poorly?
So, as you pointed out, in recent years, several reports from other organizations have presented Canada as an environmental laggard, ranking us near the bottom of the list of OECD countries. But these reports didn't always use the most meaningful and relevant environmental measures to compare countries. And as a result, these reports unfairly presented Canada's environmental performance in some respects. So let me give you an example to make it more clear. Past reports, when they wanted to evaluate air quality across countries, they simply looked at emissions per person. In other words, they measure total emissions in each country and then they adjust that by the size of population. But when we want to evaluate air quality, the key question is not about emissions per person, but is about the exposure of people to air pollution. A few large industrial operations in some Canadian provinces may skew that metric that was used in past reports upward, but that may not necessarily translate into actual exposure to air pollution in urban areas where most people live. So when we are evaluating air quality, it's really critical that we account for people's exposure to air pollution, but that critical factor was missing in past reports. So we try to develop an improved methodology to correct those past mistakes, and we closely followed the methods that were developed by some economists at Yale University and Columbia University, and we compared and ranked 33 high-income OECD countries across a wide range of environmental measures that relate both to the protection of human health and the preservation of ecosystems. Overall, in this study, we have used 17 environmental indicators that cover key areas such as air quality, water quality, greenhouse gas emissions, and agriculture. And our study provides an aggregate score ranging from 0 to 100 across 17 environmental indicators to provide an easy way to understand how Canada performs relative to other countries when it comes to protecting the environment. And we have found that Canada performs relatively well. Canada ranks 12 out of 33 countries with a score of 67, which is above the OECD average. So contrary to some previous claims, we see that Canada has a good environmental record. And this is something that I guess all Canadians should be proud of.
Right, that's good to hear that perspective. Like you point out, the context matters, doesn't it, right? And especially when we're dealing with human health, okay, it's not just with the ecosystems, but they kind of both need to be measured there. That's what counts, I think, as well. So Canada 12th out of 33, so that's pretty decent. Which country, by the way, was on the bottom? And on the flip side, which one ranked in the top spot?
So the best performer was Sweden, followed by New Zealand and Finland. Sweden obtained a score of 80 out of 100, and the worst performer was South Korea.
Now, is there any, do we know offhand, like, is there anything that, big red flag that jumps out? This is why South Korea is way on the bottom and why Sweden is so much better than everybody else?
So it's just, we have used 17 environmental
Hmm.
indicators, and we have aggregated all those indicators to create an overall index. And when we have done that, we see that, like Sweden is the best performer, while South Korea is the worst performer with a score of 41.4, which is way lower than the OECD average.
Hmm. Okay. I'm curious, how did the U.S. do, our next door neighbor here?
Yes, so the United States performs slightly better than us.
Wow.
The United States, yeah, ranks 10 out of
Okay.
33.
But pretty
Yeah, well,
close. We're pretty comparable then.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. There was little
Yeah. Yeah.
difference between our.
And just to get some perspective on this, now you're again we have South Korea in the bottom, Sweden on the top, and we have again 11 nations I guess that rank better than Canada. Now, is there a large difference there, a big gap, or are we relatively speaking pretty close to these other countries, even the ones that are ahead of us?
When we compared Canada's score to the top performers, such as Sweden or New Zealand, we found that there was really little difference between us and those top performers. For example, the second place, New Zealand, obtained a score of 74.7, which is not much higher than Canada's score. Overall, most of the top ranked countries in our study cluster closely together. And that's why we see that there is really little difference between us and top.
Right. So it's a little bit, maybe if I can use this analogy, when we watch the Olympics, the top 10 finalists running in the 100-meter sprint, it's amazing. They're finishing this close. The difference between top spot and 10th spot, maybe hundredths of a second, right? I mean, they're all good, right? There's no one here that go, oh man, that guy like really sucks. No, they're all incredibly good. So Canada is doing well. So, okay. Why don't we start off with the air quality ranking? How did we do there?
So Canada performs exceptionally well on air quality. In order to accurately measure air quality and its impact on human health, we have used two measures in this study. The first one examines the extent to which people are actually exposed to harmful fine particulate matter. Fine particulate matter is a common and key air pollutant that includes smokes, dust, and fumes. And on that measure, Canada performs really well. We ranked four. The second measure related to air quality examines the portion of the population in each country exposed to unsafe air pollutant levels set by the World Health Organization. So Canada is a top performer on that measure with 100% of Canadians exposed to levels of fine particulate matter that comply with the air quality standard. So overall,
Okay.
Canada performs exceptionally well on that area.
Yeah, interesting. Is there any particular reason? Does it have to do with our population being spread out so widely across the country? We have smaller population areas. Is that something that affects that, or?
So, in this study, we haven't really looked into reasons
Okay.
behind any particular finding or ranking. I cannot really comment on any reason that has caused basically this um, great result for Canada or any other
Hmm.
countries.
But the good news is we've got good air quality. All right. How about water? That's another big one, of course. And I understand this is based on two indicators that assess the health risks posed by water pollution: access to improved sanitation facilities and also access to improved water sources. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yes, as you mentioned, for water quality, we have used several indicators. Just the two that you just mentioned are related to water quality and its impact on human health. And on those two measures, we ranked 13. But I should note that on those measures, almost all the countries performed really well. So there was really little
Okay.
difference between us and top performers. With respect to water quality, another key indicator that we looked at was wastewater treatment. This is a key driver of water quality. And this indicator tracks the portion of wastewater from municipalities, household, and industry sources that are treated before releasing into the environment. And we ranked 17 on this measure. But it's important to note that there are a number of measures in our study on which almost all the countries do well. So even if Canada's ranking is relatively low on a particular measure, there is often little difference between us and top performers.
We shouldn't be losing any sleep over your ranking 17th, I guess, for wastewater treatment compared to some of the other countries because it is actually very close, is what you're saying, right? So,
Exactly.
okay,
We're
interesting. Yeah.
ranking relatively low because we are comparing ourselves against a group where everyone is doing well.
And you had also another rank. We apparently finished fourth, I think, for the intensity of use of our water resources. What does that mean, the intensity of use?
Yes, so that measures, that's another indicator that we've used, and that measures freshwater withdrawal as a percentage of total water resources. To put it simply, this indicator compares countries' abilities to ensure sustainable management of water resources. And on that measure, we ranked really well, and we ranked four.
That's good to know. Now, greenhouse gases, of course, this is a big one. Everybody, talks about a lot. So, how did we do here, and what do you actually base that ranking on?
Mhm. For greenhouse gas emissions, we have looked at three indicators. One of the indicators that we looked at was carbon intensity, which measures carbon dioxide emissions adjusted by the size of the economy. On that measure, Canada ranks 31st out of 33 countries. But, when we are looking at this result, we should also keep in mind that Canada is a massive country with with cold climate and with long transportation distances and even large natural resource sector. Clearly, the size of a country's land mass drive some of its need for energy and its subsequent greenhouse gas emissions. Many of the OECD countries that are performing better than Canada on this measure are smaller countries with milder climate, with higher population density, meaning that these countries have less energy needs compared to Canada. So we should keep in mind these basically natural limitations that Canada has when we're comparing Canada to other countries. Another indicator that we looked at, which is related to greenhouse gas emissions, is low emitting electricity production. This indicator measures the share of total electricity that is generated from low emitting energy sources, such as nuclear or renewables. And on that measure, Canada performs really well. We ranked 8 out of 33
Okay.
countries.
Okay, yeah, again, like you say, the context actually does matter. Again, size of the country, what are the actual energy needs? It is cold up here. In Vancouver, you guys are doing not too badly, but hey, Lethbridge gets pretty cold too. So now Canada only ranked 29th for forest cover. Does that mean, we're overcutting our forests? Can you explain that one?
So with respect to forest cover, despite preserving its forest cover over a decade, Canada ranks relatively low. As you mentioned, it ranks 29. And the reason is that while we have preserved our forests over a decade, other countries have somewhat expanded their forest cover over the same period. That's why we rank relatively low when compared to other OECD countries.
Okay, so we got to get busy and plant some more trees. All right. On the biodiversity front, how did we compare with other nations as to the number of species we have at risk?
So yes, we looked at that. We looked at that indicator, which measures the number of species that are in risk of extinction as a percentage of total known species, and we ranked relatively well. We ranked 12 out of 33 countries.
Okay. Of course, Canada, known for a large agricultural industry here. How was our record on environmental issues there related to agriculture for fertilizer use, for example?
Canada has a really good record on environmental issues related to agriculture. So, among the main concerns related contributing to agriculture are excessive use of fertilizers and intensive use of pesticides. So we compared and ranked countries based on the intensity of using fertilizer in agricultural system, and Canada ranks really well. We ranked
Okay.
four. And we also compared countries on average pesticide use per area of cropland. And again, we ranked relatively well. We ranked 11 out of the 33 countries.
Okay. Well, I'm up against the clock here, Elmira, but big picture, Canada sounds like does not have any major reasons to be overly concerned with our environmental record in comparison to other OECD nations, correct?
Exactly. The evidence is clear. Most developed countries have established sound environmental protection regimes, and Canada fares well when compared to other high-income countries.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Elmira. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.